All right. That sounds like it's working. That's good. I see a little green dot. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Chef Brother Luck. I am the owner and chef of 4 by Brother Luck, Lucky Dumpling, and soon to be open, hopefully in the next month, the studio, which is going to be a private cooking venue located above Lucky Dumpling. So, we're really excited about that. Honored to be a part of this whole session. Um, I had the opportunity to kind of hear what CHOW was about. I don't know. It's probably been about 2 years now since we did the whole Colorado Restaurant Association panel with Marcus Samuelson. But just been watching from the sidelines, and I think it's important to see how how many people need this right now. You know, it's a topic that I feel like we're finally starting to discuss, mental health being something of an importance, something that we're dealing with within our industry, something that we're not ignoring, something that we're focusing on. So I love seeing organizations like Chow do great things, especially here in this community. Um, Colorado is always trying to set the standard, and I love that it's getting national attention, and it's really starting to hit a lot of other markets. I was actually on a James Beard call this morning and brought this program up. So um, it's amazing to see that it's grown as much as it has. But it just shows the need. You know, when I look at when I look at my story, there's so many trials and tribulations there's so much that has happened, but the one thing that I'm always very aware of is my story. As much as it's hard to relive, it's hard to go back through those emotions and those feelings. My story's not meant for me. My story's meant for someone else. My story's meant for someone else to hear, to hopefully find inspiration, to find some hope, to be able to persevere, to find some courage, and really showcase their determination to get to the next level. So I'm always extremely aware of that, and I think when you're in the media eye, and I've been very fortunate to gain a pretty decent following, there's perception, and perception is not reality. And I think that's one of those things that really comes with the attention is learning how to deal with the amount of vulnerabilities that you have to put out there, and you're going to be judged by. um, I've really had an amazing career thus far. I've been in this industry for about 25 years. Started when I was two. I was actually a teenager. um, but I've cooked all over the world. Started as a dishwasher. One cook didn't show up. You end up on pantry and just kind of work your way up from that point on. Spent a lot of time with corporate, working major hotels. I actually got to travel around the world doing different positions with some of those brands. Eventually decided I had learned everything I could within the corporate setting, and I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't gaining anything. I wasn't finding that joy. The higher up that you climb, especially in that setting, the less cooking you do. So you lose that passion, and I think that was something that I wanted to correct. So I went off on my own when I was 30 years old. Started my own business, jumped off the cliff, built an airplane on the way down, and that was one of the scariest things that I've ever done. It was every bit of scary as it is today when we started. But I think back to that decision, and that decision is what actually took me into my journey of spiritual wellness, right? Dealing with the past, the ghosts, the pain, everything that I had bottled up for so many years. A little bit about my background: originally from the Bay Area, born in San Francisco, raised in Oakland. um, we had a good life until you realize you don't have a good life. um, we didn't grow up wealthy. My father passed away when I was 10 years old. uh, my mother got lost to the streets. She ended up in prison. So kitchens were my way out. It's a place where you were accepted, It didn't matter your background. It didn't matter your experience or your education. Kitchens were kitchens. You come in, you work, you do a good job, you get paid, you go home. And I met families there. I always tell people when I got into this industry, it wasn't because I wanted to be famous or because I loved cooking. It was because I got a steak sandwich every night. I slept on a bartender's couch. Um, they took me in. I created my family in the restaurant industry, so there was a dependency on that family. And being so young in this industry, it's not that I found that passion for cooking at an early age. It was it was the first time I had role models, positive role models that told me good job. They encouraged me. They told me I could do something, and I believed them. So I became thirsty for their attention. I wanted that recognition over and it was like a drug. I wanted that recognition over and over and over. And I spent the better part of my career really chasing that attention, sacrificing time with family, time with friends. Everything was about the restaurant, everything was about the kitchen. It didn't matter what was going on in the outside world. If it didn't exist in the kitchen, to me, it didn't really exist. And I think a lot of us fall victim to that mentality where we're taught that work life balance means work on work until your life suffers, and then work on life until your work suffers. We have to find something that translates a little bit better. So as I was going through this journey, I was getting ready to go on my first season of Top Chef, and all the emotions of starting a restaurant 4 years prior, getting ready to open a new location, taking out a huge SBA loan, and then risking it all to go on TV for validation was one of the hardest decisions that I made. And my wife and I had discussed it. We had talked about it. What's going to be the benefit of this whole experience? And we looked at the back end. It can pay off dividends on the back end, but up front, it's gonna take a lot of risk. And I went off, filmed the show, did 2 months, completely gone, had no idea how they were going to portray me. Um, Gave up my phone, my computer, my internet, my radio, my television, no books, and lived with a group of strangers for 2 months. And 6 months later, coming back and watching it all unfold, and seeing how the edits were done, and how you were portrayed as a character. It was pretty enlightening. I didn't expect to learn as much about myself going through that journey. When you watch yourself on television or you see yourself in interviews, um, you do a lot of one-on-ones, you start to notice your mannerisms, you start to notice how you carry yourself, you start to notice the stories that you're telling. And one of the things that I really observed was I was chasing the ghost of my past, and I didn't really know what that meant. I was trying to to bring forth all of these emotions I had bottled up, and I was trying to do it on a dish. I was always storytelling. I had somebody on the show tell me, brother, I don't understand your food until you tell me about it. And that was powerful for me, because I realized at that moment, I had a lot of stuff bottled up. So I started to see a therapist. I was in a position where I was constantly angry. I was disconnected. I was just buried in myself and work, trying to keep the restaurant open, trying to keep things going, in hopes that this show was going to change everything. And my wife was the one that suggested, maybe you should go talk to somebody. You obviously can't talk to me. Um, I think you should go talk to somebody. So, after years of resisting a therapist, especially when the courts were ordering it, or they wanted me to deal with it as a angry teenager, I wasn't ready to talk. But it was interesting going into this therapy session later in life, because I realized I actually was ready to talk. Was ready to actually share everything I had bottled up. And at first, it was more about shock value. I just wanted to see if I could scare this therapist off with, talking about the violence that I had seen growing up and been involved in, talking about the death I had seen as a child, talking about the drugs and the alcohol that were consumed to numb the pain. Talking about the pain of losing a parent and then the second one being incarcerated. All those things. I was just waiting for the reaction, and I noticed that the therapist didn't really give much feedback. I just kind of listened. It took notes and encouraged me, and I kept spilling out, kept spilling out. So I would sit in my car when I would get out of these sessions, and I would actually record myself, just recapping what I had just experienced because I felt everything was raw and fresh. I wanted to see it for myself, what I was kind of going through, and not forget. My wife and I really struggled to communicate at that time, and it was more me because I wasn't willing to drop uh, my bravado, right? My masculinity, as the provider, as the husband. I wasn't willing to drop a lot of those emotions, and let her in. Even though I was dealing with it, I felt on my own talking with this therapist. What really came to pass was Top Chef reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to do a second season? We'd love to have you back out." And we got in this huge fight, my wife and I, about, why would you do that again? You didn't like how you didn't have control over how they portrayed you when they did make you a villain in one of the episodes, the backlash that came with that. I saw how much it hurt you, how much it affected you, right? Her protection mode kicked in, and I still went. I was chasing approval, chasing validation. I felt like I needed a cosign. I needed somebody to say I was good. And I went back out to film the second season in Kentucky, and I didn't expect what I was about to go through, uh, to trigger everything that I had been building up. So when I got on the show, I went through a rough gauntlet, cooked over the course of 36 hours, most of it, and then got on the show and then got kicked right back off. And the rejection was extremely hard. I didn't know how to take that. But what really got me was, the sequester. When you're kicked off of a show like Top Chef and you're there for the duration of the film, to cool off, they call it the cool off period. They put you in a room, in a hotel room, right? And to control, how much access you have to the outside world. You don't have a key card to your room. You don't have a cell phone. Like you're very tucked away. And then when the producers need you to come film, they give you a call, and then a PA comes and picks you up. As I sat in that room, everything started to just spill out. Having alcohol accessible, having pills accessible. Um, I didn't know how to take the rejection, and it wasn't that it was just the show that was eating at me. It was actually the years of rejection, the years of neglect, the things that I had just started to finally dig into, and the show was just a trigger. It put me into a deep spiral, and I think one of the hardest parts about talking, in regards to your mental health, is the ownership. Talking about suicidal thoughts. Just the fact that a split second decision is eternal and will affect everyone. you know that's something that's really hard to talk about because there's a lot of shame there, I think, for most people, but it's more common than you would expect. And I think that's why mental health is such an important discussion point, because so many people reach that point where I was at in that hotel room, where I felt neglected, I felt disconnected, I felt like the best way to get their attention was to hurt them all. And that was something that I had to make a decision. And when you have so many different when you have so many different options to help you make that decision, right? You're drinking a little bit more, or you might take the sleeping pill with it, um, or you might even be looking in that bathroom and knowing that you could take your life that way. I think that's something that's scary. Um, I woke up the next morning out of a stupor, and that was the morning Anthony Bourdain died, and it really hit me hard at that time. I remember seeing it on the news that morning while I was locked in a hotel room. The same feelings I had been going through the night before. Someone who we all idolized or respected, new in this industry, I've been going through the same thing, and that was powerful for me. That was a moment where, I knew I needed help, and this is when I told the producers of Top Chef, I need to go home. I don't want to film anymore. I'm done. Um, I know I signed a contract, but I need to take care of me. And that was tough because there was a lot of almost a feeling of disgust or disapproval that, no, you're supposed to be here. You're being an inconvenience. And I made the decision to leave, which was really tough because I'd worked so hard to get to that point to compete on that level, something that I measured myself by as a professional, um, to reach a breaking point. I had the show was just the trigger, and I think that's something that I've walked away with uh, throughout the years is just knowing that there's a lot of triggers. You have to be aware of how you're feeling, where your emotions are at. I love the check-in. I think that wellness check-in is something that's extremely important because it's easy to get into a funk. I've learned through my time with my therapist that I struggle with PTSD, something that I wasn't familiar with. I have a lot of friends who are soldiers, a lot of friends who have been deployed and have seen combat, and that's something that I associate with them. So to be diagnosed with that was really tough, but it was because of my upbringing and the the speed of how quick I had to grow up. The things that I saw during that time, that was something I had to learn to deal with, which also led to a lot of anxiety and depression. I had been bottling things up. I was taught as a man you don't cry, right? And when we were younger, if you cried, you would actually get punched in the chest by another grown man to toughen you up, and that was what they call making you hard or making you street tough. Um, so you learn to hide your emotions really quick. You learn how to carry yourself in a certain way and not give anything away. But eventually that bursts out, right? You can only shove so much in that closet before the doors just come off the hinges. And that's where I was at. I was at a point and I didn't immediately seek the help. That was the worst part about that whole experience is even though I recognized that I needed help, I had to get out of the situation. I needed to be around people who cared about me, supported me, loved me. I still came back and put myself right into work. And I went on a crazy binge of traveling to New York for James Beard dinner, flying back to Colorado for Aspen Food and Wine for a weekend and partying and drinking and cooking, going right into multiple dinners, multiple events, just nonstop until I eventually just crashed. And when I crashed, it all spilt out. That's when you really have to take control and say, you know what, this isn't okay. I'm hurting myself. And I'm hurting myself not through drugs, but other addictions, right? Because work is an addiction. It's easy to get lost in work. It's easy to numb the world because of work. That was my drug of choice. I could put in 17 hours and not flinch, and I could be the most non-emotional person in the kitchen and keep a blank face and keep it all tucked in and leave it at the door. Being a business owner is what really taught me that I have the ability to change a culture, to change behaviors, to change the way we actually talk about this. And the only way that I could do that was to actually begin sharing what I was going through. Because I think when you're lonely, I think when you're going through your depression or your valleys where you can't get out of them, it helps to know you're not alone, right? I'm not crazy. these thoughts that I'm having, the feelings, the emotions that are tucked in, it's not just me. That is so powerful, and it's why I think it's important to share, because that's where someone, they don't want you to solve for them, right? I don't need you to say, "Are you okay right now? Are you depressed?" We know we're going through it. It doesn't help, but hearing someone else's story, I think, is something that has stood out for me on really seeing change. Because as I've started to understand my triggers, as I've started to understand when I'm getting into that mindset that I can't get out of, those funks, which are the worst. And it's easy to disconnect. It's easy to hide from the world. It's easy to let every deadline pass by and just say whatever. I have to make a choice, and for me, every day is a choice. So, I try to start my day with that intention. I've learned to manage my time more effectively, and when I talk about managing my time, there's certain things that I know can set me off. So I removed all of my reviews off of my phone. I don't get them on my phone. I don't get them in my email. I don't get them on my phone. I can go on and check my business reviews once a week. And I can do that on a Monday. I can do that on a Tuesday. I will schedule time for that, because there's nothing worse than having that trigger hit me at 12 o'clock while I might have had a cocktail, or I might, you know, it's the first thing I do in the morning is check my email. So I might read something and then it's ruined my day. And now I'm taking that out on other people. So, controlling the amount of communication and controlling my time has actually been something that's been extremely helpful. When I get up in the morning, I intentionally don't go straight to work. I take some time for myself to, whether it's physical or it's mental or it's spiritual. I take that first half hour for me, and putting me first has actually helped me stay in a better mind frame than to just constantly be responsive to the attacks that happen every day. And technology is one of the worst things that I personally feel had to be removed from my life. I don't wear an iWatch. I don't need a watch to tell me, get up, you're being lazy. I don't need a watch to constantly tell me, hey, this person needs your attention right now. Here's your notification on your Facebook. Here's your text message that just came through. For me, that's too much. I miss the days of going into work, finishing out my shift, going into my desktop, responding to my emails, sending out my reports, closing that computer down, and going home. And none of that got checked until the next day, when I actually got back to the restaurant, or I got back to the hotel and I logged on to that computer and actually opened that email. Now we have phones that are essentially attached to our hips, and it's a constant it's a constant drive of you're never going to disconnect. And I think that's something that we have to be extremely aware of, especially in this industry, is you need to make time for yourself, right? And you need to make time for yourself so you can help others, right? If you're not helping yourself, how can you help anyone else? And then you have to be honest with yourself. What is your addiction? What are you struggling with? What is your vice? What's numbing you? There's so many things that happen every day that I think we all just kind of ignore or avoid, but that voice inside of us is telling us that's what it is. I was struggling with drinking for a while, a couple of months ago, and I just needed a break, and I went on 7 weeks of no alcohol. And when I did have a drink, it wasn't because I needed the drink. It's because I wanted the drink. I wanted to be social, but it wasn't, 4 bottles of wine, 5 bottles of wine a night. And I think as we've been through COVID, and all this isolation, it's been really easy to rely on a lot of those vices. So we have to find the ways out of those valleys when they happen, when we get into those fits. um, but it's about awareness. It's about knowing where you feel on a daily basis, knowing how to communicate that to the people who love you, right? The people that love us the most are the ones we put the most pressure on, because we don't think that they're going to break or they're going to go away. They love us. So we intentionally put all of this pressure and negativity and anger towards those people instead of the ones that, probably deserve it. So I think that's something I've been aware of is how am I being towards others? What is my perception? Um, there was a time where I asked my wife during all of this, I don't have any friends. I don't know why. She says, because you've created a perception that you're too busy for everyone. So they stop inviting you to stuff. That's your choice. And that was hard for me to hear because she was right. Oh no, I'm traveling. Oh no, I got to go film this. Oh no, I'm at the restaurants. Oh no, it's Friday night. Oh no, it's Sunday. Like I always had an excuse for everything. And eventually everyone stopped inviting me. I actually had to be the one to change that narrative and reach out to people, right? The phone works two ways. So I'm really, really good about that now in my life of making the attempt to constantly reach out. Because some people, they won't, they're not there in their lives to where they realize that they need the interaction as well. They need the support and they won't reach out. I'm one of those that, I'm intentionally, I call the people I don't want to call because I need that healing, right? I'm dealing with something internally. I need to face that. I need to get it out of the closet and I need to move forward. So I think those are key pieces on how I've made some of my changes in my life, to constantly deal with it. But it's a constant battle. Every day is going to be a challenge. Every day is going to be a fight. You have to have people in your corner that love you. My wife told me this the other day, and obviously, I speak very highly of her because we're best friends. But she said, when you were in your lowest, everyone knew. As much as you feel like you hit it, as much as you felt like you didn't have emotions, you didn't wear them on your sleeves, everyone knew. The people who loved you knew. They knew something was wrong. So don't be so quick to just assume that people don't know that you're going through something, or you're hiding it extremely well. Our body language reads pretty clear most of the time, and our disconnect and our intention behind staying too busy or staying unavailable or not reaching out to communicate, um, is seen by others. So I feel like I'm rambling. That was a lot.